morning, everyone. Okay. So, welcome to today's session. My name is Jacklin Karimi. I'm a policy engagement specialist here under the RCOE project. And I'll be taking you through today's session, which is on a case study. Let me share my... Okay. Hope you can see my screen. Yeah, so I'll be taking you through a case study and trying to identify gaps in this study and what we can learn from this study. So the order of these slides will be to understand the structure of the national and the subnational biodiversity plans, that is the NBSUBs and the subnational ones. Then we will look at a case study of Rwanda's national land use plan, which is an equivalent of the national spatial plan for the Kenyans. And then also we look at their recently launched NBSUB, that is the one that running from 2025 to 2030, which was recently launched in October, that is last month. We will then try to see some of the key issues that are arising from these two documents, and then some gaps, and then identify some opportunities and now recommendations that you can derive from this study. So first of all, a distinction between a national and subnational biodiversity plan from the definitions. So a national biodiversity plan, that is the NBSUB, we can say the difference is mainly in the scope. So a national one will provide a countrywide framework for meeting the international commitments. That is covering the entire country or the nation. However, for a subnational one, it is basically meant to link now, meant to pick something from this national one and focus on one key context. For example, the national one will focus on several sectors, but then for the subnational one can choose to pick maybe one sector, let's say the environmental one. Yes. So in essence, a national plan then is able to set a strategic direction that the subnational ones should translate and ensure that the strategies in the national one are able to be met easily. In terms of the structure of how the national one looks like, and this now will inform how the subnational one will look like. First of all, it has to have clear vision and goals, which have to be measurable. That is the target. Priority is given to ecosystem and species, then spatial priorities in terms of maps, and then the protected areas. It's also meant to look into the institutional arrangement. That is the institutional framework that is meant to make sure these targets are met. Also, it will look at the policy structures that are present and make sure that it is aligning to them, as well as monitoring and evaluation frameworks that are meant to make sure these targets are met, as well as budgeting and financing, because obviously you need funding to achieve most of these targets. And then how you can integrate this into the existing sectoral policies. By sector now, I mean we have the agriculture, we have mining, we have tourism, and all those. So now we dive deeper into Rwanda's. So the Rwanda's National Land Use and Development Master Plan. So this master plan has a lifespan of, that is between 2020 to 2025. It was officially launched in 2021. So we can all agree Rwanda is one of the strongest African countries to give us a case study in terms of how they are planning their spatial areas, how they are mainstreaming biodiversity, the ecosystems, and all that. So this particular national land use development plan, it is able to incorporate biodiversity sensitive zoning, which is critical when you want to ensure that the spatial planning of the country is able to accommodate these biodiversity expectations. We have protection of critical ecosystems. Each country has this. We have integration of ecological corridors, again, into the biodiversity. Then alignment of these national restoration commitments that anchored in the NBSAP. Yes, so being able to align with it as well as ensure there's ensure there is consistency between the two documents. So another thing, I mentioned it was adopted in 2021. So the plan places strong emphasis on the environment. We've mentioned that. And then it's able to categorize the natural environment, into key subsectors, which he said is important for coherency. So natural resources, biodiversity protection, and environmental quality. Something else, it's also able to have a national balance sheet whereby it's able to earmark significant proportion of the country's land to conservation in as much as they're trying to develop and accommodate the growing population. So according to this plan, protected areas, wetlands, forest, water bodies, they cover close to 41.07% of Rwanda's land, which is in its 2019 baseline. So we can also see from this document that it is also a living document. By a living document, they are able to make amendments continuously. So for instance, this land use plan was developed in 2020 and officially launched in 2021. So, and considering they were required to update their NBSAP, which they have already done, so they have to make sure that they are able to make amendments to this plan, and it's able to communicate what the NBSAP is able to also communicate. They also have a portal where the public can access, they can view maps, they can view any changes that are being made. So there's transparency and public access. Again, I think we learned from previous sections the importance of public participation earlier on, from the stages of planning to the stages of implementation and even monitoring. So that is something that we can learn from Rwanda. Then it has also been able to align with other national strategies. That is, for instance, the Rwanda Green Growth and the Climate Resilience Strategy in terms of sustainable land use objectives, in terms of climate resilience infrastructure and sustainable development, as well as ecosystem restoration. So now trying to link this to their NBSAP. So like I said, we will look at the current one, that is the one running from 2025 to 2030. It was launched last month. So some of the key strategies and priorities in this NBSAP, again, we can see they are marrying each other with the land use plan. That is restoring the degraded ecosystems, integrating biodiversity in the sectoral sectors. Then we have mobilizing finances for nature positive investments. There is strengthening research and data. There is inclusive, that is where community participation comes in, and they're able to even make sure they include the youth, the women, basically gender sensitive, then also the traditional knowledge, yes, of the communities. In terms of which of these 22, there are 22 targets in the NBSAP. So which of these targets are able to align with the targets, align with spatial planning and land use? So we have one target that aims to achieve close to zero biodiversity loss by 2030, which they are going to achieve mainly through land use planning, that is zoning. We have restoring at least 10% of degraded lands and inland waters. There is also one on conserving 11% of land and inland water through protected areas by 2030. We have also one on integrating biodiversity again into sectoral policies, laws, as well as any development plans that may come up. There is also a target on increasing accessible biodiversity data for decision making. Again, we've talked about the importance of making sure that this data is easily available and easily accessible for faster decision making that is sound and that is reflective of the data available. And again, we usually say you may have the data, you may have, you may allocate so many funds in collecting data, you may allocate so many funds again in making sure there is proper data sharing mechanisms. But as long as this data is not accessible, as long as there is so much problems in terms of accessing it and interpreting it, it's as well as not being there. So what's the linkage now between this National Land Use Development Master Plan and the current NBSAP? Just to highlight a few, we have land has been clearly allocated for conservation. So from the balance sheets that we've mentioned from the National Land Use Development Master Plan, that has able to assign a large portion of land to conservation, that is the protected areas, wetlands, forests, and all that. And also this one aligns now with the NBSAP's target to expand and maintain the protected area coverage. Their target is 11. So such alignment suggests that spatial planning is being used as a concrete mechanism to meet biodiversity conservation goals. So you can see how much it's reliant on a spatial planning. The next one is integration into national development strategy. So the National Land Use Development Master Plan has been able to embed broader national development frameworks such as the Vision 2050 and the one on climate resilience that has also been used to shape the NBSAP. So this is ensuring that biodiversity is not just one-sided, that it is not one document that is spearheading the biodiversity talk. It is also in other long-term development plans and strategies. There is also one on restoration and ecosystem services. Again, it's in both documents. Again, the issue of transparency and data sharing. So the fact that there is a portal, it's able to make it publicly accessible. They're able to get trust from the citizens. And so it's easier for them to even support some of the recommendations in this document. So what are some of the key issues? So it is a known fact that population pressure is an issue in most African countries, in as much as more land is being allocated to conservation and biodiversity and restoration. There's an issue on the high demand for the growing population. They also need food, that is agriculture. There's also need to improve infrastructure. So unless key strategies and interventions are made earlier, there may be conflicts later on in terms of these conservation zones that have been zoned out for conservation. And then the risk is that the fact that this is a live document, there's a risk of rezoning during these amendments and encroachment despite their location. So there now comes an issue of enforcement of this zoning laws. Then there's also subnational planning misalignment. Every day we see new development plans coming in terms of, let's say there's one for Rwanda, but now I'm sure there's one for a smaller town or village. So the fact that they need to be aligned, they need to make sure that they're able to communicate the same thing. That is also a key something to look into. Sorry. Another thing is weak implementation and monitoring mechanisms. Government is changing every day, every year. So unless every person getting into this position, every person with this mandate and their emphasis and civil education and the importance of implementing these recommendations, the implementation is going to be weak and the document is not going to translate to the existing situation in the country, which is also something we can learn as countries trying to marry biodiversity, integrate biodiversity into our spatial planning. There's also the issue of finances and also the institutional capacity constraints. In terms of finances, we know we have to frequently campaign and advocate for more funds to be allocated to conservation and even this spatial planning. So that is also key. And then in terms of it continuing to improve the capacity of various people being employed in these institutions that are meant to ensure proper implementation of these development plans. So frequent capacity building, which is, I'm sure, is offered by so many institutions, for instance, even at CMRD. Yes. And another thing, we know technology keeps changing, keeps improving. So again, we can't run away from capacity building and continuous improvement of these people. So in terms of opportunities and some of the recommendations that we can get from this case study. So based on this review of Rwanda's two key documents, we need to strengthen our institutions. We need to strengthen the people who are in charge of implementing these strategies, who are in charge of leading the entire country, including the region, into achieving these key strategies and goals. We also need to enhance monitoring and reporting. So long as there is no one monitoring to know where were we yesterday, where are we now, how far are we from this target, there needs to be frequent reporting, there needs to be frequent monitoring, such that if there is any issue that comes in, if there is something that needs to be intervened, it's done easily. So again, strong monitoring and reporting mechanisms. Capacity building at district level. This is, for instance, in Rwanda, capacity building shouldn't just be at the national level. It should also start from the communities. They should understand why we are doing this conservation, the benefits that they're gaining from it, and yeah, they're able now to carry on that idea of ensuring there is balance between conservation as well as development. We also need to mobilize biodiversity funds. And the beautiful thing about this is that being able to have these documents, being able to show these funding organizations that you have a clear strategy, you have a clear framework on how you want to get this target. It's an easier way to get this funding. So, for example, leveraging on the NBSAP's financing commitments, you can link them to land use interventions, that is such as watershed protection, that is in terms of wetlands, and then restoration of any degraded areas. So this is able to attract green financing, donor funding, and even public-private partnerships, that is between the government and the private sector. We also have to make sure that our legal systems and our policy documents and interventions, they're integrated. So we need to, like I mentioned earlier, these things need to be live. They need to be periodically revised to ensure that they stay responsive to our goals, and they keep making sense, because I think that is the end of my presentation. However, I have uploaded this supporting documents. So currently, for the countries that we cover, that is 24 countries, Eastern and Southern African countries, we have 3 countries that have submitted their NBSAPs. That is Uganda, Tanzania, and now Rwanda. So I have been able to upload those documents on the e-learning platform. Please go through them and identify the key strategies for these countries, maybe where you can see inconsistencies, and also some of the areas where you can see something better could have been done. Yes. So there will also be a quiz, which will be available from afternoon. Yes. That's the end of my presentation. Yeah, so I'll take up comments or questions from you. Any questions, comments, please raise your hand. so that I can mute. Oh, can unmute you? Or you can send through the Q&A section in case you have any question or you need anything clarified. Let's see. Oh, okay. Can you please provide? Okay. So there's one, the Kenya Constitution does not recognize indigenous people. It uses vulnerable and marginalized. Sometimes use of word indigenous has negative connotation. Maybe I can unmute you, you expound further on how the negativity of this indigenous. But I know they're usually used interchangeably such that they don't, to ensure that everyone feels accommodated. I know there are people who don't prefer to be called marginalized or vulnerable or indigenous. In most communal setups, elders normally dominate discussions and decision-making. How can one ensure equal representations in terms of different groups and gender during participatory mapping in most I think in this during participatory mapping, I am sure we usually have people driving these workshops. There's usually, let's say it's an organization or even ministerial government, people who are in charge of these discussions. So ideally, it is something that they should take charge of, because the whole point of public participation is not to get the opinions of only the elders. The whole point is actually to get the opinion of this community, the actual members of these communities. And maybe an example of how this can be resolved is by ensuring that when let's say you want to get comments from the group, make sure you select an elder, select someone from the community, and they're able to talk in that setup. Or you can even make use of technology, that is where we have platforms where someone can anonymously contribute to these discussions. Currently, I know there are so many platforms where even during workshops, people make use of these technologies to make sure there is anonymity in terms of public participation. So that gets rid of any fear or biasness when giving these comments. Will you be taking us through? Okay. I'm trying to read any. Is it possible for teasers? Thanks for. Okay. You have mentioned 3 countries have submitted their plans. Why haven't other countries submitted? Is it legally binding? So there's so many, there could be so many reasons as to why other countries have not submitted. One, it could be the financial aspect. And then 2, it could be, you see how we have a change of government. So the fact that there are different people handling this NBSAP reports. And then another issue could be data provision, because you see the NBSAP, you have to agree as a ministry. And in most countries, we know, for example, biodiversity data and protected areas, all this data is not in one institution. It's basically in several institutions that need to sit down and agree on how to report on this data and even agree on the targets. But I believe most are still on trying to finalize because the deadline is fast approaching. is it legally binding? The CBD, it's not, I can't say legally binding, but when you, it's more of a soft, I won't call it a soft law. You're mandated, because when this CBD, the guys were sitting down to discuss these targets and to come up with a framework, the countries agreed to meeting these targets and making sure that they align their policies and their targets to ensure that they achieve this target. So there's basically no punishment, but the fact that they agreed to meet them, ideally they should. Issues with ArcGIS online. I think this will be handled via email. Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you for your time. Please interact with the e-learning platform. Again, don't shy away from asking more questions and even continuing the discussions in our community, and looking forward to more interaction in the community and our social media pages. Yes, thank you.